Hello, my darklings. It's me, Cherry. Thanks for coming back. Today, I am going to answer the quintessential question, what is goth? I'm going to be giving you a multifaceted answer to this question, and you are also welcome to join in a conversation down below in the comment section. Ask me any questions you might have. Give me your thoughts on what goth is and what it means to you. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing I wanted to do was look up the dictionary definitions for goth. Personally, I thought it was interesting to look at it from a technical side of things and then from a cultural side of things. So, the first place I went for the definition of goth was dictionary.com. According to dictionary.com, goth is a genre of rock music that first became popular in the 1980s and is characterized by morbid themes and melodies. The secondary portion of that definition was that goth is a person who is part of a subculture favoring this style of music and a dark and morbid aesthetic. As we all know, goth originated in the late 1970s, but it did not become popularized until the 1980s. So when I first looked up that definition, this confused me. I think that's something to keep in mind, the difference between when it originated and when it became popular. The second place I went for a definition was urbandictionary.com, and the top definition was very long-winded. I want to say it was like 2 to 3 paragraphs long. But to give you the TLDR summary, a goth is someone who sees beauty in the dark side of life. They embrace a holistic view of existence, light and dark, life and death. To circle us back to the dictionary.com definition and what goth rock is, I went ahead and looked on Wikipedia and looked up their definition of that genre of music. So, according to Wikipedia, goth rock is a style of rock music that emerged from post-punk in the late 1970s. It included such artists as Susie and the Banshees, Joy Division, Bauhaus, and The Cure. These were all viewed as goth rock pioneers. And it is defined as a separate movement from post-punk due to its darker music, accompanied by introspective and romantic lyrics. So, according to all of the technical sources, goth is firmly rooted as a musical subculture. And while I agree with that, I think it has grown exponentially into being more of a multifaceted subculture. And beyond music, it encompasses a philosophy, a beauty, a literature, cinema, and lifestyle facet as well. So when I say lifestyle, it has to do with like home decor and things like that. Basically the environments that we live in. My personal goth journey began, as most would probably say, long before I even knew what goth was. Halloween was always my favorite holiday, and I always loved dressing up that time of year. It was always cold here in Wisconsin, so I used to sort of bemoan the need to have warm clothes underneath my costumes when I went trick-or-treating. It kind of limited what I was able to or wanted to wear each year. But I always loved Halloween. And there was one particular moment in my life when this was truly brought home. I believe I was in middle school at the time, and my family and I took a trip up to Door County, which is a popular vacation destination. It was October that year, and there was a fun park that was still open, and they had a haunted house that was open all year round. And now this is not a professionally created haunted house. There weren't lots of special effects or anything like that. It was really just a creepy Addams Family-esque mansion on the grounds, with some built-in pyrotechnics and just a few actors. But just going through, my father decided it would be fun to take my brother and I, and we had an absolute blast. I really enjoyed walking through the halls, the whole aesthetic of the haunted house, interacting with the actors. They had it set up so you sort of had like a spooky tour guide who then sort of left you at a certain point in the house. You had to find your way out. But it was everything about the experience that really sort of began building on that initial spark of loving Halloween. So that, I would say, was really a defining moment in my personal goth journey. As far as since I have known what goth was, I was first introduced to the subculture itself my sophomore year of college. I was taking an American cultures sociology course, and the goth subculture was actually talked about. And it sort of got me thinking more about all of these formative experiences, not just the haunted house, but like everything building up to it. At that time, I identified more as a rocker girl. I still dressed in a darker style, but it wasn't yet as romanticized and like truly goth. So I had sort of, I had already embraced that darker aesthetic, but hadn't yet really put a term to it. So when we started talking about it in that class, I started to sort of realize, like, yeah, this is kind of who I already am. I didn't know, but this is sort of my jam. This is sort of where I've been living all along. I just never knew. I plan to do a separate video on my personal gateway artists, because obviously once you find out that it stems from a musical world, you want to start to dive in. So I plan to do another video later on with my formative sort of gateway bands and artists. So I'm not going to talk about them separately here. So in the 15 years since I discovered the goth subculture and started to identify with it, I have sort of formed, as all goths do, my own definition of what goth is and what it means to me. And it really sort of closely mirrors what was on the Urban Dictionary definition. Goths are individuals who appreciate the darker side of life. We enjoy the antithesis of popular aesthetics. So to specify a little bit further there, specifically in America, being tan is considered the goal. You want to be, tan and healthy looking. Well, goths appreciate a paler skin tone. Classic American girl has pale hair. Goths actually prefer black hair or darker hair colors. The norm is a neutral makeup look. Goths prefer dark makeup, black makeup. The norm is no body modification, or for most of my life, it was basically no body modifications. But goths like to tattoo themselves, get piercings. And just for general clothing and lifestyle, it's lighter colors being the norm and goths embracing the darker colors. It also is heavily music-based, obviously. You're going to meet the most people who identify with the same subculture as you by going to shows, going to club nights, going to art events, things like that. You'll meet more goths that way. So music is still very key to this particular culture. But I think it's also important to recognize that goth music isn't just one thing. It encompasses a wide variety of dark music genres. And just to name a few, this was literally just me spitballing. We have the classic goth rock. We have post-punk. We have dark wave, cold wave, synth pop, EBM, industrial, death rock, new wave, neo-folk, some heavy metal, some alternative rock, ethereal wave, and gothic metal. In addition to music, there is a strong crossover with horror in the literature and cinema spheres. So dark concepts, things that sort of explore death and life after death. Some of the classics, just think about like Frankenstein and the doctor being obsessed with being able to revive the dead and bring them back to life again. That is a quintessential Gothic novel. But it's also romantic and can sometimes be tragic. It makes me think of the relatively recent release Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro. That is a beautiful Gothic ghost story. I highly recommend it if you've never seen it before. I feel like it encompasses a lot of the Gothic cinema aesthetics and Gothic cinema themes. It also focuses on the supernatural, so creatures that may appear human or seem human but aren't, vampires, werewolves, things like that, and dark or black comedies, so things that sort of poke fun at death or make light of the fact that we're all going to die. I mean, the truth of the matter is you'll never get out of life alive, so just sort of playing with those ideas. One of my favorites that I saw long ago, but would actually recommend if you've never seen it, I believe was in the 1990s, and I believe it was called Last Supper. It stars Ron Perlman, and I believe there's a young Cameron Diaz in there. But it is a dark comedy, and it's a story about some friends who host regular dinner parties, but after listening to the radio show of a particularly bigoted individual, decide that they should start inviting people to dinner that they think the world would probably be better off without, and killing them. So, if you've never seen Last Supper, I highly recommend it. Check it out. So one of the biggest things that tends to happen when normal Americans, I'll say, because I'm from America, one of the things that tends to happen when confronted with a Gothic subculture in public is that it can be confused with emo. So I wanted to take a little bit of time here and just sort of frame the differences between the emo subculture and the goth subculture. A goth can be emo, and an emo can be goth, but neither the twain shall automatically include the other. The dictionary.com definition of emo is that it is similar to goth, that it is based in music. It is a type of guitar-based music developed from emo core, but having a softer pop or mainstream sound. And similar to the dictionary.com definition of a goth, an emo is a fan of emo, especially a person who is overly sensitive and full of angst, or adopts a certain style characterized by dyed black hair, hi Eleanor, dyed black hair, tight t-shirts, and jeans, etc. That's Eleanor, that's my other kitty. She's, I guess, gonna join us for a little bit. Hi. So according to those dictionary definitions, it is a very similar subculture to goth. However, Urban Dictionary defines it simply as an emotional person. Goths are different from emos because they are not inherently emotional. The music is key. While there are dark and romantic themes, it does not necessarily need to be overly emotional. Goth is more of a philosophical concept, but does not require that one be deeply in touch with their emotions, where emo is inherently emotional. Emo comes from the term emotion, emotional. Aesthetically, they are very similar. So this is why it's easily confused. It's why I get annoyed when I'm confused for an emo. I don't get angry or upset. I try my best to educate instead of, just jump down their throat. I would just say for anybody who's watching who is not a part of the goth subculture or emo subculture, is more of the normal mainstream of things, just be more curious instead of just assuming one or the other. If anything, I don't know of anybody who's upset if you just ask them, so are you goth, or so are you emo? And that gives them a chance to just kind of let you know, well, I am goth, or oh no, I'm more emo. So obviously there are plenty of common misconceptions when you're dealing with a subculture like this, because it is gravely misunderstood. The acceptance and humor around such an uncomfortable subject as death can be very misconstrued. Wearing all or a lot of black can be misconstrued. So some of the common misconceptions, I'm just going to read off here and debunk them one by one, obviously. Goths are all devil worshippers or witches. Absolutely not. I have plenty of goth friends who are Satanists. I have plenty of goth friends who are pagan. However, I am not either of those things, and I know the majority of folks that I know who are in the gothic subculture don't identify as either of those things either. So that is not a safe assumption at all, and definitely a misconception. Goths are all suicidal or depressed. We are not all suicidal. We are not all depressed. We all feel emotions. We can become suicidal or depressed. We deal with the same mental health issues that anybody does. But to assume that we dress the way we do because we want to kill ourselves is absolutely absurd and not a very kind misconception that exists. Goths are all unfriendly or unapproachable. There is a grain of truth to this, because we have all been outcasts, most likely, at one point in our lives. We do tend to be somewhat socially, I shouldn't say we tend to be. We can be socially awkward and sometimes a little bit wary of outsiders because we've been treated badly in the past and because we're so misunderstood. But I would say, as a rule, goths aren't particularly unfriendly or unapproachable. If you're not used to the style, if you don't have friends who are in the scene, it can be a little bit difficult to break the mold or break the ice. But no, absolutely not. I've had plenty of friends who are extremely bubbly, extremely outgoing. I tend to be a little bit more shy until I get to know you, but that's just because of the past that I come from. So unfriendly, no. Unapproachable, maybe, but that's probably mostly due to social awkwardness. Goths are just trying to be edgy. Oh my God, please. We're not just trying to be anything. We are who we are. We dress the way we dress because that's who we are. We feel good in these clothes. We feel good listening to this music. This is how we identify, and I'm not trying to be anything for you. I am who I am. So, no, we're not just trying to be edgy. The goth culture is fully Caucasian only. This has actually had some press on it recently because a very popular retail website had some particular merchandise that basically suggested that goths were for white people only. This is absolutely insane. I personally think that's disgusting. I don't think that any subculture should be based upon the color of your skin. Just because we go for a paler aesthetic doesn't necessarily mean that it's just for white people. And I welcome all walks of life into the Gothic subculture. If you identify with what is goth, and you identify with the darker aesthetic, and you like the music, and you like to dress in black, and you like Halloween and all of that stuff, I don't care what you look like. That doesn't matter. As much as that visual aesthetic is a part of the subculture, skin color, sexual orientation, any of that does not matter. It is not strictly Caucasian. It is for anybody and everybody. And please, please, please do not be afraid of joining the subculture just because you're not Caucasian. Speaking of sexuality, goths are all sexually promiscuous or sexually explorative. This is not true. I think this has to do with a lot of the crossover events that take place between goths and the fetish community. So it can get a little bit confusing if you live in smaller towns, because I know for a while I've experienced places that basically didn't have goth nights. They had fetish nights. But the goths would go to them not because they were part of the fetish community, but because it was the only place they could go to listen to some of the music that they like. So no, not all goths are sexually promiscuous or sexually exploitative. And to approach someone and assume that is disgusting, and don't do it. Goths are all the same. No, that's absolutely not true. I consider myself one of the good examples of this because I have red hair, and most goths tend to go with a black hair dye or black hair, sometimes like a platinum blonde. But I prefer to keep my natural color. I find it's unique enough on its own. So I'm very different from a lot of the goths that I talk to. I have naturally rosy cheeks. I don't always cover that up. Having red skin isn't necessarily considered a beauty ideal in normal culture or goth subculture, but it's who I am, and it's unique enough, for God's sake. So I just sort of own it. Goths are not all the same. You'll see a lot of black, but there are many other hair colors. There are many other styles that exist. While black is a key, it's not the only thing. And that takes me to the next misconception, which is we only wear black. Absolutely not true. I would say 9 times out of 10, yes, black is the go-to color. But for me personally, even jewel tones like deep ruby, sapphire, deep purples, or emerald, I find those are extremely gothic as well, and they're not black. Goth is just a phase. No. I know plenty of older individuals who have identified with the scene since they were teenagers and never changed. I'm 35. I've identified for 15 years, and before then, before I even knew what it was, and I don't see myself ever choosing to step out of the subculture. I love everything about it. So it's not just a phase, and to suggest that to a goth is extremely insulting. Please, please don't do it. Goths are dangerous or hate non-goths. That's not true. We may look a little bit scary just because you don't understand why we look the way we do. We're not going to come for you. We're not going to hunt you down in your sleep. We're not going to attack you. You give us respect, we will give you respect, and that's really all there is to it. It's just a normal person-to-person situation. There's nothing different just because we look different from you. All goths are Nazis. No. And please don't go to your local goth night in Nazi garb. It's not cool. It was never cool. It never will be cool. Fascist regimes are not fashion statements. Please just don't. Goths are all vampires. Obviously not. No. There's a lot of crossover because books like Dracula and vampire stories and the supernatural are inevitably a part of Gothic culture. But we don't all run around wearing fake fangs. We don't all think we're going to suck your blood. Again, insulting. Just stop. So again, just to kind of bring it back to center. I don't consider myself a typical goth. I do identify with the aesthetic. I do identify with the music, but instead of black hair, I have red hair. I wear many different colors of makeup and clothing. I listen to all kinds of music. While my favorite types do tend to be in the gothic sphere, I do listen to all kinds of other things. I am generally happy and accepting of others. I have my bad days just like everybody, but I don't mope around. I can be a little shy, but that's just because that's who I am. I love meeting new people if I can break out of my shyness for a minute, and I would love to see more people join the gothic subculture if they identify with it. We're not dying or undead or anything like that. I think we're having a little bit of a resurgence right now. But I certainly encourage you, if you're watching this and you haven't really started to step into the scene yet, to kind of go out there, go see a concert, go to a show, go to a gallery opening, go to this, that, or the other. Try to meet more people who kind of jive with the same things that you do. Please. Get out there, find your tribe. It makes a huge difference to be around people who like the same things that you do and are open to different ideas and things like that. I watch and read all kinds of things. I don't strictly stick to the gothic vein, and I embrace and encourage uniqueness in others. I have plenty of friends who aren't goth. I have plenty of friends who identify more in the normal realm or in other circles. And I think variety is the spice of life, as they say. So, I don't consider myself a typical goth. I'm not on here in white face makeup and just black makeup. I wear all kinds of different things. I just happened to decide to wear something a little bit more gothic for this video because I enjoy it and I don't get to wear it as much as I used to. So, so thank you so much for joining me for this little exploration into the gothic subculture. I hope it was informative and vaguely entertaining. And if you have any questions or just want to leave a comment down below, please do so. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you liked this video. I am always open to questions, so definitely go ahead and ask those down below too if you would like. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more darkly inclined videos, hit that subscribe button, and then yeah, what? If you enjoyed this video and would like to see others like it, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to tap that bell so you get notifications. And please stay lovely. I'll see you next time.